The Apostle Paul is arguably the most quoted figure in the Bible, with the possible exception of Jesus. His letters are an absolute treasure trove of source material that we use in worship. But he is perhaps at his best when it comes to providing material for charges we give in worship. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. Nearly every service of worship you go to in the Christian church will include some sort of a charge to the congregation. As you know, my own begins, "Go now from this place refreshed, restored, renewed." But there are others that ministers use, many from Paul's letters. One of the best known is from Paul's letter to the Colossians. I actually use a portion of it at nearly every wedding I perform. But I don't always use the whole thing. In fact, this one passage from Colossians, when it is used as a source for a charge, is often divided up. Sometimes people use the first part and sometimes the second part. Here's what Paul says, and I think you'll recognize it. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in the one body. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom. And with gratitude in your hearts, sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to God. And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Almost no matter how you slice and dice it, this is strong stuff. You can see, I think, why I use the first portion of this as a charge to newly married couples. It invites them to practice a certain way of life with one another that is particularly conducive to developing a strong, enduring relationship. It emphasizes kindness and gentleness as well as forgiveness. You've probably known couples whose relationships become strained. In many cases, if they simply practiced kindness, patience, and forgiveness with one another, their marriage bonds would be immeasurably strengthened. But as it is, they are often anything but kind to one another, and all too often hold grudges rather than forgiving one another. Under these conditions, keeping love alive within the bond of marriage is difficult at best. The truth is, we often find it easier to be kind to people who are not our family. But within our own families, we can tend to be less than kind, demanding even, anything but kind. Imagine life, though, if we bent over backwards to practice kindness with those closest to us. In my experience, life is infinitely more pleasant when we are kind to one another. And kindness from one person to another begets kindness in return. The problem is, kindness doesn't always come naturally. We tend to focus on each other's little failures, and we become short with one another. It takes a real effort to be kind day in and day out. But that's the point, isn't it? Paul is telling us that we must practice kindness. We have to work at it. We have to remind ourselves to be kind at precisely those times when we don't feel like it. Though he doesn't name it as such, practicing virtues such as kindness and patience is a spiritual discipline. Paul continues on in this passage and includes a phrase that ideally should be in our minds all the time. Whatever you do, he says, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus. Stop and think about that. What difference would it make in our lives if we thought of every word and every action being something we say or do in the very name of Christ. It would certainly make us stop and think about saying ugly things to one another or behaving rudely or selfishly. Again, Paul doesn't use the term, but it becomes a spiritual discipline to think of our words and actions in this light. Paul's words to the Colossians, as simple as they may sound, are an important framework for envisioning the Christian life. No wonder we continue to use them today. And now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.